The morning sun slipped quietly through the curtains, washing the kitchen in a soft golden light that did nothing to warm the icy tension between them. Clara stood by the counter, one hand gripping a cup of coffee she hadn't taken a sip of, her reflection trembling faintly in the dark surface of the liquid. Across from her, Daniel sat at the table, motionless, staring at the phone in his hand like it contained a weapon. The night before was replaying in both of their heads every word, every lie, every silence that now screamed louder than anything else. The air smelled faintly of burnt toast and betrayal. Ethan, their 7-year-old, sat between them, completely unaware of the war unfolding in the quiet glances passing over his cereal bowl. His small voice broke the silence as he looked up innocently and asked, "Mom, should I tell Dad about last night?" The question hit Daniel like a bullet. The spoon froze halfway to his mouth, his hand suspended midair, while Clara's face went pale, her fingers tightening so hard around the mug that it nearly slipped. For a moment, no one breathed. Only the ticking of the kitchen clock filled the suffocating space. "Eat your breakfast," Clara said quickly, her voice trembling. The words stumbled out too fast, too sharp. Daniel's gaze didn't move from her face. Something cold, heavy, and final sank inside his chest. He'd suspected things for months, the late-night meetings, the password-locked phone, the faint traces of cologne that didn't belong to him. He had told himself he was paranoid, that she was tired, that he was imagining things. That last night changed everything. Last night he saw the truth with his own eyes. She thought he was out of town, that he'd never know. But he had been sitting in the dark, watching the security feed on his phone as headlights swept across their driveway. He saw her get out, not alone. A man followed, a hand on her waist, a kiss in the kitchen, their kitchen. Then they disappeared down the hall to his bedroom. He didn't sleep after that. Now. In the cold light of morning, his son's innocent words confirmed it all. Clara couldn't even meet his eyes. Daniel slowly set the spoon down, the sound of metal against porcelain louder than it should have been. He stood, pushing his chair back. The scraping noise made Clara flinch. Ethan blinked, confused. "It's not what you think," Clara said, her voice cracking. Daniel didn't reply. Instead, he picked up his phone, tapped the screen, and pressed play. The sound of her laughter filled the kitchen, the same laugh that once made his heart swell, now twisting the knife deeper. Clara lunged forward to grab the phone, panic flashing in her eyes, but Daniel pulled it back, his expression unreadable. "Go get ready for school, buddy," Daniel said softly, his gaze never leaving hers. Ethan hesitated, glancing between them, sensing the storm but not understanding it. "Go on." The boy slid off his chair and pattered away, leaving them in suffocating silence. Clara's breathing was uneven now. Her eyes were wet, her hands trembling. "It was a mistake," she whispered. "It didn't mean anything." But Daniel remembered the way she looked at the man in that video. The tenderness, the hunger. It wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. "How many Thursday nights have been a mistake, Clara?" His voice was calm, too calm. Her lips parted, but no words came. That silence was her confession. He turned away, walked down the hall, and pulled out a suitcase. The sound of the zipper echoed like thunder in the quiet house. He wasn't packing for himself. He was packing for her. When he came back, she was standing in the doorway, tears streaking her face. "Please, Daniel," she said softly. "Don't do this. We can fix it. Let's talk." He paused, looking at her one last time. "Talking," he said quietly, "is what I've been trying to do for months." Then he dragged the suitcase to the front door. The weight of betrayal hung over them like smoke. "When I get back from taking Ethan to school," he said flatly, "I expect you to be gone." She broke down completely as he turned away. her sobs echoing through the house he no longer recognized as his home. Daniel helped Ethan into the car, his heart breaking at the sight of his son's small hands clutching the straps of his backpack. "Dad, are you mad at Mom?" Ethan asked softly. Daniel's jaw tightened. "No, buddy," he said after a pause. "It's just grown-up stuff. You don't need to worry." Ethan nodded and ran toward the school doors, his world still intact, at least for now. But Daniel's had already shattered. He sat in the driver's seat for a long time, gripping the steering wheel, staring blankly ahead. The image of the man's arm around Clara replayed in his mind again and again. Mark Rowe. The name tasted like poison now. His neighbor. His friend. The man who stood in his backyard last summer, laughing, holding a beer, toasting his anniversary. The man who played with Ethan, who helped him build the deck. The man who had been inside his home in more ways than one. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was a public humiliation. Daniel's pulse throbbed in his temples. He drove past Mike's house, the truck still in the driveway, sunlight glinting off the windshield like mockery. He slammed the brakes and got out, his breath shaking as rage took over. When Mark opened the door, his smile died instantly. Guilt flashed across his face like lightning. "We need to talk," Daniel said, his voice cold. Mark stepped outside, glancing nervously behind him. "You were in my house last night," Daniel said. Mark's lips parted in a weak attempt at denial, but Daniel cut him off. "Don't, I saw the video." Silence. The color drained from Mark's face. He rubbed the back of his neck, his tone shifting to regretful. "It wasn't supposed to happen. I swear it just—" Daniel shoved him hard against his truck. "You kissed my wife in my kitchen, in front of my kids' cereal bowls. You think I care if he planned it?" Mark's hands went up defensively. Okay. It wasn't just once," he admitted. "It's been a few months." The calm way he said it made Daniel's vision blur with fury. He wanted to hit him, to break him, but he didn't. He wouldn't go to jail for these two. "You're going to tell your wife," Daniel said. Mark's eyes widened. "Wait, what?" "You heard me," Daniel hissed. "You tell her today. Before I do. Or she sees the video herself." Mark's mouth opened to protest, then closed again. He saw the truth in Daniel's eyes and nodded slowly. "Fine," he said quietly. "I'll tell her. Just don't ruin everything for the kids." Daniel almost laughed. "But the kids," he said bitterly. "Now you care about the kids." He turned away, leaving Mark standing pale and broken on his own doorstep. When Daniel got home, Clara was sitting on the couch, suitcase by the door, her eyes red and swollen. "Did you take him to school?" she asked weakly. Daniel nodded but didn't say it. "I talked to him," he said. Her voice trembled. "You told him?" "No," Daniel replied coldly. "I talked to your boyfriend." Her face crumpled, a sound escaping her throat that wasn't quite a sob. "He's telling Emily today," Daniel continued. "And when he does, the whole neighborhood will know. I hope you're ready." Clara covered her face, crying harder, but Daniel just stood there, numb. For the first time in months, he felt clarity. The lies were over. The pretending was over. And as he looked at the woman who once was his world, he realized she was already gone. The house felt hollow after Clara left, like the walls themselves had absorbed her absence. Daniel sat in silence, staring at the empty spot on the couch where her suitcase had been. The quiet wasn't peaceful, it was suffocating. Every tick of the clock echoed louder, reminding him that his marriage, his family, the life he thought he built on trust, had all collapsed overnight. He picked up his coffee mug, now cold, and took a sip anyway. The bitter taste matching the storm inside him. By the time he picked Ethan up from school, Daniel had practiced his smile in the car mirror at least 10 times. He didn't want his son to see what was left behind, that smile, anger, heartbreak, confusion. "Hey, buddy," he said as Ethan climbed in. "How was school?" Ethan talked about a spelling quiz and his friend's new bike, completely unaware of the emotional wreckage at home. Daniel nodded, pretending to listen, forcing himself to respond in all the right places. For his son, he had to keep it together. That night, when he tucked Ethan into bed, the boy looked up at him with sleepy eyes. "Is Mom coming home soon?" Daniel froze for a second. "Not tonight," he said gently. She's staying somewhere else for a while." Ethan frowned. Did I do something? The innocence in his voice shattered Daniel's composure. He knelt beside the bed, brushing his son's hair back. "No, champ. You didn't do anything wrong. This isn't your fault, okay?" Ethan nodded slowly, but Daniel could see the worry flicker behind his eyes. When he finally closed the door, Daniel leaned against it, fighting back the urge to punch the wall. Days turned into a blur of routine work, school runs, microwave dinners. The house was quieter now, but not in a comforting way. Every corner held a memory of her laughter in the kitchen, her perfume lingering on the pillows, her shoes by the door. He packed them up one night and shoved the box into the garage. Out of sight, but never out of mind. Then, one evening, while Daniel was making dinner, his phone buzzed. An unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. A woman's voice spoke softly on the other end. "Daniel Cross?" She asked. "This is Melissa Rowe." His stomach twisted. "Mark's wife." Her tone was calm, almost too calm. "I think we need to talk," she said. They met at a quiet cafe the next afternoon. Melissa was composed but pale, her hands wrapped tightly around her coffee cup. "I know," she said before Daniel could even speak. "Mark told me everything, or at least enough." Daniel didn't know what to say, so he stayed silent. "You should know," she continued. "You're not the only one who had suspicions. I just didn't want to believe it. I thought I was being paranoid." Her voice cracked slightly. "Turns out we were both living with liars." Daniel nodded. The pain in her eyes mirrored his own. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. She gave a sad smile. "Don't be. None of this is your fault. But I thought you should hear it from me." Mark laughed. "He packed up and went to stay with a friend last night." She paused, looking out the window. "It's strange, isn't it? Two families, same street, same dinner tables, and everything burns down at the same time." For the first time since the affair, Daniel felt a flicker of connection with someone who truly understood. They talked for nearly an hour, mostly about their kids, the lies, the anger, the emptiness. When they parted ways, Melissa squeezed his hand gently. "Take care of yourself, Daniel," she said. But taking care of himself was harder than he thought. The nights were the worst. When the house went quiet and the world outside faded, his mind replayed everything on a loop: the video, her voice, the betrayal. He couldn't sleep. He started running in the mornings just to exhaust himself. Sometimes he'd pass Mark's empty house, lights off, driveway empty, and feel a grand satisfaction. Weeks passed before Clara reached out. One evening, a message popped up on his phone. "Can we talk?" "Please?" He stared at it for a long time. Every part of him wanted to delete it, to pretend she no longer existed. But another part, the part that still remembered her laugh, her warmth, hesitated. Against his better judgment, he replied, "Tomorrow." At the cafe, when she walked in, she looked different. Tired, smaller somehow. Her hair was tied back messily, and her eyes were red. "Daniel," she began, her voice trembling, "I've made the biggest mistake of my life." He didn't interrupt. He wanted to hear what excuses she'd prepared. "I thought I was unhappy," she continued. "I thought I needed something male. But when I saw you walk out that door, I realized I destroyed everything that I had. Daniel looked at her, trying to find the woman he'd fallen in love with years ago. But she wasn't there anymore. Do you even know why you did it? He asked. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I don't know, she whispered. Maybe I wanted to feel wanted again. Maybe I was just stupid. He leaned back, letting her words hang between them. You weren't just stupid, he said finally. You were cruel? Her eyes filled with tears. I know, I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to hear me say it. Daniel nodded slowly. I heard you, he said, standing. But hearing you doesn't change what you did. He left her sitting there, alone with her regrets. Outside, the air was cold, but for the first time in months, he felt like he could breathe again. The weight that had been crushing his chest began to lift. He wasn't healed yet, but he was finally moving forward. When he got home that night, Ethan was sitting on the couch watching cartoons. Hey, Dad, he said, looking up. Can Mom come to my soccer game next week? Daniel paused, his throat tightening. We'll see, he said softly, sitting beside him. He wrapped an arm around his son's shoulders, pulling him close. For now, it's just you and me, champ. And as the credits rolled across the screen, Daniel realized something. His marriage was over. His trust had been shattered. But what remained his son, his strength, his peace was finally enough to start again. Daniel woke up before sunrise. The faint light seeping through the blinds, casting soft stripes across the bedroom wall. It had been weeks since he'd seen Clara, and now her absence still lingered in the corners of the house. The pain wasn't as sharp as it used to be. It had dulled like an old wound that still ached when touched, but no longer bled. He got up quietly, brewed a cup of coffee, and sat by the kitchen window. The same kitchen where his world had once collapsed now stood silent, stripped of her laughter and the memories that once made it feel alive. He had found a rhythm again. Work, parenting, solitude. It wasn't the life he imagined, but it was his. Some mornings, he'd take Ethan to school and watch him run to his friends, smiling like nothing had changed. That smile reminded Daniel that not everything was lost. His son was still his world, the one pure thing untouched by betrayal. One Saturday afternoon, Daniel was raking weeds in the front yard when a car he recognized slowed in front of the house. It was Melissa. She stepped out wearing dark sunglasses and holding a folder in her hand. Hey, she greeted softly. Got a minute? Daniel wiped his hands on his jeans and nodded. They stood in the driveway, the autumn breeze rustling the trees around them. I thought you should see this, she said, opening the folder. Inside were printed emails, photos, and transaction records. I found this on Mark's old laptop. Turns out your wife wasn't the only one. Daniel frowned, flipping through the pages. He's been doing this for years, she said, her voice shaking. Dozens of women. Different cities. Even while we were both pregnant. Daniel's jaw tightened. The betrayal he thought was personal was now part of something much bigger, a trail of deceit that stretched far beyond his marriage. Why show me this? He asked. Melissa took a deep breath. Because you deserve to know it wasn't just her weakness. He manipulated them. All of them. Including Clara. He stood there in silence for a long time, staring at the papers, then at the woman who had been dragged through the same storm. What are you going to do with all this? He finally asked. Melissa looked up, her eyes cold but steady. Expose him. And dumb letting men like him ruin lives and walk away clean. Daniel nodded. For the first time in months, he felt something unfamiliar closure. Maybe this wasn't just about revenge or forgiveness. Maybe it was about finally understanding the truth and letting it go. That night, he couldn't sleep. He sat outside under the stars, the same sky he used to watch with Clara during their better days. The memories drifted in her laughter, her smile, their late-night talks about the future. He let them come, and for once, he didn't push them away. He wasn't angry anymore. He was just tired. The next morning, he drove to the hospital where Clara worked. She looked surprised when she saw him waiting by her car. "Daniel?" she said cautiously. "What are you doing here?" He smiled faintly. "Relax, I'm not here to fight. I just wanted to say something." She nodded, uncertain. "You were right," he began softly. "You made a mistake. But so did I. I kept holding on to anger like it would fix something. It didn't. It just kept me stuck." Clara blinked, tears forming in her eyes. "Daniel, He shook his head gently. "Don't. You don't owe me words anymore. I just wanted to tell you, I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace." Her lips trembled as she tried to speak, but he was already turning away. As he walked back to his car, Daniel felt lighter than he had in months. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, and it didn't mean reconciliation. It meant freedom from the endless cycle of pain and resentment that had tracked him since that morning at breakfast. Later that week, Daniel and Ethan took a weekend trip to the mountains. They hiked, roasted marshmallows, and laughed until the stars came out. Sitting by the campfire, Ethan leaned against his father's shoulder and said, "Dad, you seem happier now." Daniel smiled, watching the flames dance. "Yeah, buddy. I think I finally am." In the quiet of the night, surrounded by nature and the simple sound of his son's breathing, Daniel realized something profound. Life doesn't break you because of betrayal. It breaks you when you let the betrayal define who you are. And he wasn't broken anymore. Back home, he started writing again, something he hadn't done in years. He poured his thoughts into a journal, every entry a step toward healing. The pain that once fueled his anger now fueled his purpose. Maybe one day he'd tell his story not as a tale of loss, but of survival. Weeks later, Melissa called again. "It's done," she said. "Mark's reputation is finished. His wife left him. His business partners cut ties." Daniel listened quietly, then said, "Good. Maybe now he'll understand what it's like to lose everything." There was silence. Then Melissa added softly, "You were right, Daniel. Some things aren't worth revenge. Just closure." He smiled faintly. "Yeah, closure's enough." As months turned into a year, the wounds became scars, faint but permanent reminders of what he'd endured. Daniel had rebuilt his life piece by piece, day by day. He wasn't the same man anymore, but maybe that was the point. Pain had changed him, but so had resilience, and sometimes, late at night, when Ethan was asleep and the house was quiet, Daniel would sit by the window with a cup of coffee and think back to that one morning, that breakfast, the moment that shattered his world. But instead of anger, a strange calmness would wash over him. That morning had ended one life, but it had also begun another, because sometimes the worst endings are just disguised beginnings.